How's it going, everybody? Welcome back to Bark Forge. Today's going to be episode 2 of the anvil stand project. Now, where we left off on episode 1, we just finished cutting all our 6x6 pieces. We drilled all the holes in the appropriate spots. I cut the threaded rod. I stripped the zinc coating off of all the hardware, and I left the hardware sitting in some decaf instant coffee overnight to get a blackened finish. Now, some of you probably were yelling at the screen when I said I was going to do the blackened finish with the coffee on mild steel, and as you can probably guess, it didn't work out that great. So here's the result we got. They're really not much darker than they started. They're not much darker than the raw steel that we started out with. I think the reason for that is that this is mild steel. This is just me spitballing here. I didn't actually look this up or anything, but I'm assuming just because this is mild steel, it didn't etch nearly as well. As a comparison, here's a carbon steel blade. I honestly don't remember what type of steel this is. It did this quite a while ago, but you can see how much darker that blade is than those washers, and that's the finish I was going for. But to be honest, I'm actually fine with the raw steel finish. So if we look at the charred sample piece that I made, this hardware actually matches really nice. That's going to look really cool. I wish I had a better and more durable finish for this hardware so that it doesn't get rusty. I think what I'm going to do is simply hit it with some WD-40 and make sure I just keep it oiled every now and again if I see any evidence of surface rust forming. And at the same time, it's a freaking anvil stand. It's going to get the crap beat out of it, so whatever. See, the threaded rod ends definitely darkened up better than the nuts and the washers did. I'm not sure why exactly that is, but either way, I'm totally fine with how these came out. Alright, so the next thing we have to do is bolt up this stack of wood, get everything nice and tight, see how it looks. And then I'm going to start preparing the surface of the anvil stand and the bottom of the anvil stand to make sure that it's nice and flat. I've got a belt sander and I've got an electric planer, and I think that should do the job. The wood still is a little wet because it is pressure treated, but I'm hoping that it's going to go pretty smoothly. I really don't think it's going to be very easy to get these threaded rods through each of these 6x6s, only because, you know, there's variations. It's lumber at the end of the day. You know, maybe the jig was a little off, so I'm expecting to have some difficulty lining everything up, getting the rods through, but I think once they're in and tightened up, it's going to be good. Got a block of wood here. I'm not going to hammer directly on the ends of the threaded rod, just because I don't want to mar up the threads at all, and then I'll have trouble getting the nut on. So I'm going to use this piece of wood here just to help save the end of the rod. Now, I don't know if anyone noticed, but this rod looks a little strange, and that's because, as I mentioned in episode 1, I was short a little bit of threaded rod at the end. I had to run out and get another 12-inch piece, but these pieces are actually 12.5 inches long, so all I did was stick it in the forge, and I just drew out the center of the threaded rod a little bit. You'll never see it, so I didn't mind messing up the threads. I don't know if you guys like spiders. I sure do. Almost squished him. Alright, that was actually really easy. This thing looks awesome so far. So that's all the cross pieces bolted together. So now we just have to send the longer threaded rods through each stack and get the whole thing bolted up. sweating pretty good now. So the next thing to do is put the hardware on. I'm just going to put the hardware on hand tight, and then I'll start working my way around the stack, tightening, a little bit at a time, and hopefully I can get an even tighten on every side, which means I'll get an even amount of threaded rod sticking out of each nut. The reason there's so little thread on this bolt right here is because of this big gap we have. There's actually two really big gaps. So once we get the nuts started, we'll be able to pull this whole stack together. Some of these threads are pretty gnarly, even with the even after using wood to protect them a little bit. It's been pretty rough getting these nuts on. Alright guys, there it is, all bolted up. That thing looks awesome. This is exactly how I wanted it to look. So next I got to start working on this surface here. You can look up close. We closed up a lot of those gaps pretty good. There's still some gaps in here, but I've put as much torque as I can on these bolts because they're starting to pull through the wood. So I'm going to use the electric planer now and the belt sander to see how flat I can start to get this surface. Alright, that is more than level enough, and it's way better than it was when we started. So now all I'm going to do is grab the belt sander, and I'm just going to go over this real quick and get rid of some of these deeper gouges from the planer. Maybe I'll hit this edge here where we had a little tear out. But so far this is great. Now this is going to be the top, and right now we got a bit of a wobble, so we'll have to flip it over and do the same thing on the bottom. I will call that close enough for sure. That is great. Alright, check that out. That looks awesome. I didn't go too crazy with sanding the top. Just wanted to get it as flat as I could. Right now it has just the tiniest wobble, but that's mostly because the concrete floor in here is really uneven. The bottom is actually nice and flat. So because I'm impatient and I really want to see what this anvil looks like on the stand, before I char the outside, I'm just going to stick the anvil on top, see how it looks. That is freaking awesome. It's got a little wobble, like I said. There's no point in compensating for that right now because I'm going to be moving this all around the shop wherever I need it. So wherever it sits, I could always just shim it up a little bit to get it to be perfectly solid. But this is great. It's the right height. You know, it feels 1,000 times better when I'm standing here. Now I got this nice low surface. This is great. It's nice and flat all the way around. Would also like to put some sort of holder around the outside to hold my hammers, you know, chisels, whatever else. I've seen some cool designs for how that might happen. So I think I'm going to leave the hold downs and the holders and whatever else I choose to put on it for part 3 of this. When that is, I don't know, because I'm probably going to use it as is for a while. But so far, I am really pleased with how this looks. That is just 1,000 times better. So only thing left to do now is get this anvil off of here. I'm going to bring it outside, put on a respirator, and I'm going to blacken the outside. Alright guys, here we are at the end of the video, and I am just absolutely thrilled because with just a little bit of work we went from this to this. Alright guys, so here it is. One anvil stand out of 2 8-foot 6x6s, a bunch of 3/4 threaded rod, way too much money, probably too much time, a lot of effort for something that anyone else probably would have just used like a stump for. But on the bright side, this thing looks amazing. I'm so happy with how it came out. It's exactly like I hoped it would look. Way better than that crappy rendering I did for the last video. So I hope you guys like it. If anyone wants to try to do a similar anvil stand like this, I'm more than happy to help you out. If there's enough interest, maybe I'll put together drawings and a materials list for this specific anvil stand. And what's next for this anvil stand is I still need a way to fasten the anvil to the base. Right now I've got some nails holding it in, so it's not going to move for the most part. It'll be alright for some forging as it is now. I still need to forge out some bands that'll go around the anvil and fasten it to the base. Like I said earlier, I want to figure out some way to create a hammer holder so that maybe, you know, my hammers can sit in here like this when I'm working. So that'll be a part 3, and that'll come sometime later. I'm way more interested in getting the new forge build started now, so you can look forward to something like that very soon. It's going to be a ribbon burner forge slash cart. It's going to be an all-in-one. I think it's going to be really cool. So that'll be a, you know, fabrication welding video and a basic how to build a forge video as well. All in all, this entire project took me 2 days. It actually really didn't take too much time. It was just a little tricky, you know, setting up the jig, getting all the holes drilled right. What really took a long time, and what I did mostly off camera, was a lot of the ends on those threaded rods, after having been cut and then whacked inside of these 6x6s, were pretty messed up, and it was quite hard to get the nuts threaded on to the ends of those rods. Now, one thing I do know, if you end up using pressure treated like I did, for whatever reason, pressure treated wood will shrink as it dries. There's a lot of fluid inside these pieces of lumber, and it will shrink over time. So at some point, I foresee myself definitely having to come in and tighten up all of these nuts once these gaps kind of start to open up again. Not a big deal. It's just something that you have to consider. Never really done a video ending like this, so I'm trying to think of all the crap the other YouTubers say. So please follow me on Instagram at BarkForge. I hope you leave a comment if you liked the video or if you have any feedback. Thanks so much for watching. If you liked the video, please consider subscribing. I'm hoping to get a lot more content like this out in the future. I had a lot of fun doing this project, so you can look forward to a lot of similar blacksmithing, bladesmithing type projects from me, as well as some Jeep content coming up.